All right, Kevin, back with you for another episode of the Million Dollar Relationships Podcast. And today I am here with Craig Dickens. Craig, welcome. So awesome to have you.
Thanks, Kevin. It's great to be on. I love it. $1 million relationships, right? Some of them are even priceless. I love the concept, and thanks for having me today.
Absolutely. And I need to give I want to give a shout out to Andrew and the folks over at the podcast guests platform. I've been on their list for a while now. I get a couple emails from them every week with a list of about, I don't know, 10 or 15 potential guests. And that's how you and I met. And I have just been incredibly grateful for those guys and what they're doing over there, because I've met some pretty amazing entrepreneurs through their platform. And I know, Craig, when you and I spoke already, it was like we'd known each other for years. We just got to have a conversation and get to know each other a little bit. But man, it just felt so comfortable. And that is a testament to the power of relationships.
Absolutely. There's new ones and old ones, and I don't care whether technology's in the middle of it or whatever, but at the end, it's people relating to people.
Yeah.
You can put it under a business environment or whatever, but at the end of the day, everything boils down to relationships. So I am a believer. And again, thank you for having me on the podcast today.
Absolutely. Well, I've been looking forward to this conversation. What I'd like to do is I'm going to turn it over to you so that you can share a little bit about, give people an idea of who Craig Dickens is and what inspires you. So, talk about, the work that you do, who you serve, what inspires you most about the work that you're doing, the impact you're making in this world. And we'll start there, Craig.
Sure. Sounds good. Well, my name is Craig Dickens. I'm the CEO of JD Merritt Investment Bank. And what we do predominantly is we help entrepreneurs create liquidity and unlock the wealth that's trapped in their business. We do that through mergers and acquisitions, helping them sell their business, or buy their competitor if they want to grow through acquisitions. And, in that process, we work typically with companies in the 15 million to 250 million range. Okay. So these are companies that have gone beyond the startup stage and they are scaling and, have, a valuable place in their marketplace. But at the end of the day, we work with those entrepreneurs and management teams that typically have built the business. So the founders or the partnerships that have come together and created something of value.
Awesome. Wow, that's and I have friends of mine that their strategy for growing their businesses currently is acquisitions. Mm-hmm. That is their strategy. That is a big piece of what they're doing and stuff. And so I can just imagine, the satisfaction you get from doing what you do and helping the clients that you get to help over all these years and stuff. And
yeah, it's really rewarding. And just to back up a little bit, I started my career in a corporate career path, and I had a mentor who kind of said, "Hey, you're really an entrepreneur. You might want to think about that." So from a background standpoint and what inspires me, I'm a 14-time serial entrepreneur. So I've made payroll and I've done all those things, right? And had some great exits myself, as well as buying 22 companies on top of those 14 to build them up through that same strategy, right? Grow through acquisition. And so, I think I have a passion now and in starting an investment bank years ago of helping other entrepreneurs kind of grab the brass ring, right? Because not everybody gets to an exit. Not everybody gets to sell their company. And some don't have ambitions to do that. They want to hand it on to the next generation, right? Or sell it to management or just keep it in clipped coupons. But at the end of the day, as we know, entrepreneurship provides a lot of freedom, a great lifestyle, for the most part, right? There's some sweat with it, but certainly there's a lot of benefits to it. So my passion really now is helping those entrepreneurs to come to an event that says, okay, this is the culmination of my business career, or it's the platform for my next chapter, whatever that chapter is, whether it be philanthropy, whether it be, flying around the world, or whether it be just spending more time with the people that you love.
Yeah. And I love that you shared that, because your background, I mean, I'm not even looking at buying and selling businesses myself, at least not at the moment. But just somebody who is in that spot, and just hearing that, like, oh, Craig's done this a few times in his own life,
Mm-hmm.
that always just like gives people pause, and like, oh, I can probably learn a few things from him. And it just makes you feel that. I mean, it's like, a guy like me who, I've just placed such value on relationships for so long, and I've had so many experiences that have happened as a result of the relationships that I've had with
Mm-hmm.
other people, that it's a natural byproduct of doing what we do now,
Mm-hmm.
and it led us to doing what we do, because it wasn't like, well, I mean, I am intentional about, I want to continually learn and grow and step into this role that I'm entrusted to hold. But it doesn't seem like work to me. It seems like I just love doing it, because I want to become the best version of me that I can, and
Yeah, and I picked up on, you mentioned the word learn, right? And so, yeah, certainly I've learned from my own experiences, but as an advisor to, CEOs and to entrepreneurs, we get to see, as a collective group, we get to see a couple hundred companies a year, and they come to us and say, hey, am I sellable? What is my value? How can I make my business more valuable to meet my personal goals?
yeah,
And so we really get to learn a lot from our clients. We get to learn different industries, and we get to, pass on that knowledge to our entire client base. And to me, that's the key to any relationship, right? I don't care whether you're a hired advisor or not, is that mutual learning and getting to know each other in that process, and learning about someone else's viewpoint. I think that's key. You got to be a lifelong learner in any business and in any relationship. I'm still learning about my wife, right? It's
yeah,
like,
me too.
we've got to invest, right? We've got
Yeah.
to invest in those relationships for sure.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, so now that we've got a little bit of context, I'm gonna switch gears. I'm gonna reiterate the question for the benefit of the listeners, and then we'll dig into this other side a little bit. So, Craig, have you ever been introduced to a person or persons that completely changed the course of your life or your business, so much so that much of what you have today would not be possible if not for this person or persons? And Craig, I'm just really excited to hear your story and your experience around this topic of relationships.
Yeah, terrific question. I guess, I think the most impactful relationship was really a mentor relationship I had when I was, 26 years old, right?
Okay.
I had picked up, moved to Cleveland, and worked for a gentleman by the name of Hal Tippett. He was my boss.
Okay.
And Hal was an amazing guy. And he was more of a listener, and he sat back, and, here I am full of steam at 26, wanting to change the world. And through our interactions and through our work life, and he really, was very Socratic, asked a lot of questions and said, well, what do you want to do with this? How do you want to handle that? Right? He didn't tell me what to do as a boss, but he really opened up a side of my brain and my heart that I hadn't seen, because I was on this corporate path, right? I
Okay.
was ready to go. He said, Craig, with your passion, with your ability to open up kind of business channels that other people don't think about, he said, you're really an entrepreneur at heart. And that insight and that, observation from his standpoint, and he actually nurtured that within the business, and then eventually said, I can see you're miserable within the constraints of our corporation. You need to go out and be an entrepreneur. And
Wow.
so that relationship from a mentoring standpoint, the selflessness, I mean, he was losing. I was a good employee, and I was, doing great work. And he said, I can see your heart, and your heart chose entrepreneurial path versus corporate path. And at 26, I wasn't at first willing to accept that, but he kind of saw something that I didn't necessarily see. And that was really powerful. And we've kept in touch, for years. And then unfortunately, he's not with us anymore, but that was a definite relationship that, changed my entire career trajectory and really led me to some pretty amazing, kind of entrepreneurial ventures, if you will, with lots of different partners. And, I've done a lot of different things with that whole entrepreneurial side of things that he kind of unlocked. So it was pretty special relationship.
And and you're right. I mean, like, how selfless was he to be able to recognize that, like you said, recognize that in you and suggest that to you in your best interest, that would in turn, like you said, you were working for him and working with him, but in order for you to do what he's suggesting, well, he's going to lose a really great person and stuff, and that's really amazing. That's really amazing.
Yeah, I think at the end of it, right? So that he really wanted me to be happy and successful. And by, he that was more important than next quarter's results or whatever, right? And that's where true relationship happens versus means to an ends, right? Kind of boss employee kind of relationship. And with that, I mean, I trust him implicitly because it was selfless, right? It was, he's like, look, this is what's going to be best for you, I think, think about it. And it turned out to be a great path.
Yeah, for sure. And you're right. You now, because of that experience with you and him, you have this implicit trust in him that you just know he's got my back. He cares about me, and because I've experienced this too. It's like we man, there's like, if there's anything we can do to help them, we're like all in.
Oh, absolutely. Yep.
I mean, anything we can do to help now, support them and help them, we are 100% in on that. And it's like, I see this a lot in my world where there are these relationships like that a lot. And when you get people together who are just like Hal, selfless, giving, generous people, and you get a group of people like that together, that's just how they show up. And it's really awesome to watch them try to outgive each other, because you cannot outgive a giver. But it is sure cool watching them try to do that and just to be so supportive and helpful of each other in a world where that is not the norm. That is not the norm. People are more concerned about the bottom line and next quarter's numbers and all of that in a lot of situations. And so, yeah.
Well, it's funny, he possessed an empathy, right? And when we talk about relationships, right? A lot of people use the word emotional intelligence, right? But, empathy is at the root. And I was reminded of this. And if you don't mind, I'll tell a quick story of a new relationship that I really respect. I met a gentleman that his name is Givi Thomas, and we attended an event recently, and I was helping to put it together, and with one of my colleagues, invited him to speak at this event. Givi Thomas was the president of Nordstrom Rack, and he held several positions within Nordstrom. And he grew that business, the Nordstrom Rack business from $1 billion to $5 billion business. So certainly, understands how the game of business is played. But, in our conversations, he used the culture of Nordstrom to really highlight the I don't care whether it's a customer relationship or, an advisor to a client relationship or what have you. He really pointed out the fact that, Nordstrom did a tremendous job of showing and living and the authenticity behind having empathy for their customers' problems. So if you think about service and to serve, right, which is the Nordstrom way, you have to ask the question. And he gave a couple of examples. So let's just say, mom is in the car and has two kids and wants to go pick something up at Nordstrom, right? So what is her biggest problem? What is her biggest pain? The biggest pain is taking the kids out, put them in the stroller, going all the way deep into the store to go find what you need, because traditional retail would say, yeah, bring them all the way into the back for milk, right? That's what they need, but they're going to pass a bunch of things on the way. And Nordstrom said, no, let's just do curbside pickup. Let's make sure that we do pickup at a Rack or a Nordstrom. Let's make it easier for mom to get in there and pick up things, right? That empathy and listening for people's problems, Givi and Nordstrom were a tremendous example of that, but he really brought that to my attention. And I hearken it back to the relationship with Hal. He had empathy for a 26-year-old kid who couldn't kind of see himself at that point, and said, I think I want to do what's right for you, not what's right for me.
Yeah.
So I use that as a, kind of a new relationship. Givi's a great guy, and I look forward to, continuing that relationship. It's a privilege to get to know him, but empathy is at the root of everything we do, right? And if you don't have empathy, you can't build a relationship. So I just thought I'd share that came to my heart.
I think that is just so fitting, because one of my older daughters, she's 30 now, but during her years of college, she went to college at PLU down south. And I should share that we are both Craig, you and I both live in the Northwest here and stuff, and Nordstrom's is a Northwest company.
Oh, yeah.
And my daughter, when she was in college for 4 years, worked for Nordstrom's in downtown.
Oh, terrific. Yeah, interesting.
Downtown Seattle location. And that was one of the things that she just raved about, is their customer service, and their return policy was you can return anything, and they will take it. Even like Caitlin would tell me, they would take things back and issue refunds. They've even done it where they know that it wasn't purchased at the store and stuff. And they still do it. They still do it, And
because they value that relationship long term, right? They, things happen, something doesn't fit, or the expectation was different, whatever, right? So yeah, that's definitely an example of really valuing the relationship long term. And that's why they have loyal customers to this day, right? And they've grown the brand.
Yeah. And some people hearing this conversation or finding out that that's Nordstrom's return policy would be like, well, I would never do that. That's crazy. That's crazy to do that. Take a return from somebody who didn't even buy from me. Are you kidding me? And yet what you just said, they have done very well for themselves as a company by adopting this mindset of, this is how we're going to treat our people. This is how we take care of them.
Absolutely.
And it's done extremely well for them as a company,
Indeed.
And so, taking that longer picture route versus the short, like, this might cost me right now, but it's all going to come back to us in the long run.
Yeah, indeed. It's funny, in our business, we typical mergers and acquisitions, when someone says, hey, I'd like to sell my business, it's very transactional. And a lot of the investment bankers in the marketplace are very transactional, because you only live with that person for probably 6 to 9 months to get a deal done.
Okay.
And sometimes you live with them longer if you advise them beforehand on how to create value, how to make a more valuable business. If they think their business is worth, 30 million, and you're like, hey, the marketplace may only reward you with about 20. How do we solve that gap? So we do tend to live with them a little bit longer than a traditional investment bank. But our business by nature is transactional. And the thing that I've found that's interesting is, while it's transactional, I mean, this is probably you talk about $1 million relationships. This is probably the most significant transaction or event in someone's life. A lot of real estate folks will say, oh, the purchase of your house is your biggest, transaction. Well, if you're a business owner, it's your business.
Yeah.
So the stakes are really high. You have a really short window, and you have human beings involved on both sides, buyers and sellers. And so, understanding what a seller really wants, and oftentimes we become, consigliere, priest, confessor, right? I mean, small business has a lot of moving parts, and we call it hair. Yes, my kid was on my payroll and this and that, right? There's a lot of noise in a lot of family-owned businesses. But ultimately, the root of getting a deal done and making sure that you can really understand what that business owner wants lies in the ability to quickly form those relationships and quickly form the trust that revolves around the biggest transaction of their life. That's right. So, we call it here, because most of our folks are former entrepreneurs and have those roots. We call it tactical empathy. So while we have to get in their shoes because, we need to understand them really well, we also need to kind of get the job done, because this is a results mission critical, right? My retirement depends on the sale of my company often, right? Those kind of situations. So, the ability to get to know somebody quickly and to ask them the critical questions of, what do you really want? What is really most important to you? And we find it's interesting. A lot of times it may be the highest priced buyer that ends up, winning the deal, so to speak. But more often than not, it's the quality of the relationship, whether I trust the buyer, whether the buyer will treat my people, who are kind of often, your extended family, really well. Yeah. So again, that too all comes down to relationships and making sure that the fit is there, that the alignment is there, that the trust is there. So, oftentimes we're also a counselor in that process. So, it's speed dating to a degree, but there's nothing better. And I'll just tell this quick story. Sorry for blathing on here.
No apology needed at all, right?
But, we sold the company about, I don't know, it's been about 16, 18 months now. And I saw one of the shareholders at the airport with his wife, and we talked about his why, and we talked about, what he wanted to do after the sale. And he wanted to go RVing, around the country, which he did. And I happened to see them in the airport, and they were just coming back from a trip that had been a bucket list dream trip. And the smile on their face when they saw me, not that I'm anything special, but the connection between their hopes and dreams, the relationship that we had, and the fact that they were so, happy about the outcome, that they were able to pursue that. I mean, that's where those relationships, even though we were working together intimately for only about 8 months, being able to keep in touch with folks to where, you see each other and you hug each other at the airport, that's pretty meaningful. To me, that's the reward. When I get to see that, that's what it's all about.
Yeah. And you're right. I can totally relate to that, because, every entrepreneur that I have the honor and privilege to work with, they are not just clients to me at all. They are all friends, every single one of them, and in fact, there is not a single person that I work with intimately that I would not invite into my home for dinner with my family. And in fact, a lot of them have done that very thing. I've been in their homes, they've been in my home, and and you're right. The relationship is so much more than the business relationship. And I can only imagine how, when you saw them at the airport and you just kind of had that chance meeting with them and saw them was just glowing, just so happy with the life that they are living now, and knowing that you had a hand in helping to facilitate that. It feels amazing,
Absolutely.
And
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, Kevin, forgive me for flipping the script a little bit, but tell me about your most significant relationship.
I could be like you. I have had so many relationships.
Yeah, it's hard, right?
But I will tell you, there's one guy that he was my introduction to business and marketing really back in 1996. And his name is Joe Polish. At the time, I owned a cleaning and restoration company here. I had worked for 7 years as a commercial fisherman in Alaska to save up money to start that business. And in the first year of running that business, I blew through about $300,000. Buying equipment, van, machine,
Sure.
supply, all of this stuff, and then of course doing advertising, I didn't know what I didn't know, and I was not doing well financially in that business. Because like I said, I just didn't know what I didn't know, and I saw an article in a trade publication for the industry from this guy Joe, and he was offering some information that I requested, and after looking through it, I'm like, man, it really resonated with me. And so I ended up hiring him and getting his help. And over the next 3 years, with his help, we completely transformed that company into a by referral only company.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
and it was extremely profitable. In fact, I was in the top 3% of cleaning and restoration companies my size in the US. And
Tremendous. Yeah.
that all happened because of him. Uh, and so many things, like he's not even in that industry anymore. In
Hmm.
2008, he started this group called Genius Network, which is a high-end mastermind group for entrepreneurs.
Hmm.
Actually, he started in '07. I joined it in '08. And he so many relationships in my life have stemmed from that relationship that Joe and I have had. And and
Terrific.
here it is, what that was '06, so 27 years ago,
Hmm.
now. And he and I are still close friends to this day. We have had conversations where, I remember I've told him how appreciative I am for him and the role he's held in my life and all that has transpired and the confidence that I've gained. Because I remember the first time, well, I used to really put him on this pedestal because he'd helped me so much and stuff. And he would put on these events for the industry, and there'd be like 300 plus people there. And him on stage, you see this persona of him, and you get whatever persona. But the first time I got to hang out with him one on one in person, I flew down to Arizona, and him and I just spent the day together. And I told him, I was like, you know what? I said, Joe, I have so much hope now because you're just a regular guy like me. And I'm like, I
Yeah.
thought you were like something different, but like now I just know that you got your quirks just like we all do. And
Yeah,
I have
indeed.
so much hope and so much confidence in my ability now too. And you've just, you are amazing at what you do. And yet, he has showed me that it's okay to be ourselves, to just be us,
Hmm.
complete with our faults, with our quirks,
Sure.
whatever, you know.
Yep.
And so I've let him know how much I appreciate him, and I was like, as I shudder to think what would happen had I never met you, and he's like, well, Kev, he's like, I believe you would have met somebody because you were looking. He's like, you
Yeah.
would have met
Yeah.
somebody. I said, you know what? I was like, you might be right, but I was like, I am really glad that I met you.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's an awesome story. We get to work with so many people likewise. And one thing, and I guess for your listeners, right, who are a lot of them are obviously business owners, um, the power of advisors to speak into your life. And you ended up working with Joe, right, in that advisory mentor kind of capacity, right? We get the privilege to work with attorneys, CPAs, wealth managers that are all kind of in the ecosystem of helping entrepreneurs achieve their goals. And really, a lot of times, we find entrepreneurs, it's all about collaboration. None of us, you said you don't know what you don't know, right? And, if you're not a lawyer, don't try to pretend one. If you're not a CPA, don't try to pretend to be one. But a lot of times in business, we find entrepreneurs kind of keep those relationships a little bit arm's length. I mean, your CPA is your friend, right? You need to develop a friendship there because they can keep you out of trouble. They're usually, if you're a go entrepreneur, they're the whoa, let's make sure we, make some money here, right? And keep this business aligned and make sure that we're in good stead with the IRS and things like that. And same thing with your wealth manager, right? We find that so many entrepreneurs have all their money tied up in their business, or a good chunk of it. I don't care if we've seen $150 million businesses where the entrepreneur, most of their network was tied up there. But again, that discipline and having those advisors, you need to invite those people a little closer and build those relationships, because none of us know what we don't know. Yeah. And that really, we found that by collaborating and putting a team together around the entrepreneur. And again, a lot of those business relationships become friendships, but really the payback, if you will, to the entrepreneur is the quality of the advice and, understanding that what you don't know, you don't know. And those folks are really there to help. So we have a lot of great relationships with those folks, and people come to us and they say, hey, I'm not ready to sell, but I think I need to get my legal house in order. What should I do here? Do you have any recommendations? So we make a lot of referrals to lawyers and CPAs that, most of us are operating at the top of our game, right? If you were fortunate enough to grow your company to X, right? X is probably the largest you've been. And so now how do we go to, X plus, right? Whether that's 10 million, 20 million, 30 million. So having those people in our lives, those relationships, those professional advisors, those friends, those people that have, been there, done that, is crucial to entrepreneurial success. So we see the folks that embrace that and that collaborative nature really do well in the marketplace.
That's right. That's right. Well, Craig, I just really appreciate being able to have this conversation with you today and have you share from your heart the way that you did. For anybody that's listening in going, man, Kevin, I really like Craig. I like the way he shows up. How can they find out more about you and the work you guys are doing in this world?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So our website is jdmerit.com, and it's MERIT, JD Merit. And I'm on LinkedIn, Craig Dickens, as well. And then, my email is craig.dickens@jdmerit. Would love to connect. And even if you're, somebody who has a question, or you're at an inflection point, should I spend this money on CapEx? Interest rates are high. What do I do about my current leverage and situation? We work with entrepreneurs to solve those tough problems. And then if you'll let me, Kevin, I'll plug, my passion is for first-time sellers. Okay. And for entrepreneurs that have never gone to institutional capital or sold to private equity or a strategic. So I'm in the process of writing a book called Deal of a Lifetime, and it should be out in the fall. And it's about mastering the keys to mergers and acquisitions and unlocking that trapped wealth in your business. So just, for listeners that are 6 months out, right, if they can wait till the fall, I'd love to have them, Google the book and find it on Amazon and the like. But that's really, hopefully that'll help a lot of people really demystify, mergers and acquisitions and really get some insights as to how the process works so that they can benefit from it.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. Well, once again, Craig, I just really appreciate having this conversation with you. My goal for the listeners of this podcast has always been right from the get-go that just by listening in on these conversations, they are inspired to place an intentional focus on creating more real, meaningful, rewarding, and profitable relationships in their own lives. And with the role that you held in that today, Craig, we definitely delivered on that. So I want to thank you for that. Any last thing you feel led to share before we call it a wrap?
No, I just, one of the things, and if folks are out there, I know the economic conditions are a little tough for some business owners, and it can be a very lonely spot, right? So I just want to encourage folks. You mentioned hope and giving hope. I want to encourage those business owners that employ people, that pay taxes, that, are really part of a community, a larger relationship. just to be encouraged. And Teddy Roosevelt gave a speech, and I think if folks want to Google it, I think it'll resonate with entrepreneurs out there. It's called Man in the Arena. And if they go to that and take a look, it's all about being in the fight, not listening to the critics, and overcoming some of the tough challenges. So I hope that lifts some people up. And if I can be encouraging to any of your listeners, I'd love to do that. And Kevin, this, for me, this has been a pleasure, because we get talking about M&A and all the, acronyms that we use in that business. So really getting things down to the relational level is so important. And I thank you for the work that you do with the podcast.
Well, yeah. I'll tell you, I get so much joy and satisfaction from doing this, and you're welcome, by the way. I accept that, so thank you. And I don't want to act like I don't accept it, because you know what, we need to be able to accept that and just graciously accept that and say thank you for the work that we do. So once again, Craig, thank you. This was an amazing conversation, and thanks much for your time today. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Kevin, and I look forward to our relationship going forward.
Absolutely.